My cheating husband made me sign over my business to him. He had no idea it was part of my revenge plan. On the morning of our 5-year anniversary, the sun poured through the windows of our penthouse bedroom, bathing everything in golden light. I stood at the mirror buttoning up my blouse, sneaking glances at Ethan as he stood beside me, tightening his tie with confident, practiced hands. Even after 5 years, I still felt a flutter when I looked at him. The same man I'd fallen in love with when we were just two dreamers chasing a vision. "Happy anniversary, babe," I said brightly, stepping behind him and wrapping my arms around his waist. He gave a distracted smile and patted my hand without looking up. Time flies when you're building an empire. I leaned my cheek against his back, breathing him in. "I was thinking we could close the office early today. Celebrate properly in the evening, you know?" "Can't," he said, glancing at his watch. "Big client coming in? Maybe this weekend?" The disappointment was familiar, a tiny stab in the chest, but I swallowed it down with a practiced smile. "Sure, this weekend." I stepped back, smoothing my skirt, telling myself not to read too much into it. "I'll head into the office a little later. Still need to finish those cupcake gift boxes." Ethan finally turned to face me, his expression all business. "That's my girl, always thinking ahead." He gave me a quick kiss on the forehead, grabbed his briefcase, and headed for the door. "Don't wait up tonight. Client dinner." "Another one?" "That was the 4th client dinner this week." "Right," I said, still holding on to my smile. "Good luck." And just like that, he was gone. I stood in our bedroom, alone. All around me were reminders of the life we'd built together, or so I thought. Designer furniture, high-end art, a downtown skyline that most people only ever see in magazines. Our life was the picture of success, and every bit of it had started with Wildflower Boutique, the little online business I launched from our dining table. It had grown beyond my wildest dreams, all because I poured my heart and soul into it. And Ethan, well, he'd always been by my side, managing the numbers, handling the operations. He was charming in meetings, good with clients, everything. I wasn't. We made a good team. At least that's what I believed. Then came the message. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant, Megan. "Running late, traffic, sorry." I smiled. Megan was always a few minutes behind, but never missed a beat once she arrived. I replied, "No problem, take your time." Then an idea popped into my head. I'd surprise Ethan, drop off coffee, maybe steal 5 minutes with him before the day picked up. It was our anniversary after all. Maybe I could remind him that it still mattered. Surprise him, I whispered to myself as I grabbed my bag. What a concept. I stopped by our favorite cafe, ordered 2 of his favorite coffees, added a small bag of pastries, and made my way to the office. When I walked in, it was still quiet. Most of the team hadn't arrived yet, the air still filled with that early morning calm. I moved quickly down the hallway, trying not to spill the drinks as I headed toward Ethan's corner office. That's when I heard it. A laugh. Soft, breathy, unmistakably feminine. Too personal, too familiar. I stopped. At first I thought I was imagining it, but then I heard it again, followed by Ethan's voice. Low and teasing. My heart sank. I crept forward slowly, praying I was wrong, that maybe it was a client on speakerphone. Maybe they were rehearsing a pitch. Maybe. But as I reached the glass wall of his office, I saw enough through the half-closed blinds to confirm everything. Megan wasn't stuck in traffic. There she was, sitting on Ethan's desk, one hand tangled in his hair, the other tracing the collar of his shirt. Ethan stood between her knees, smiling like he used to smile at me. They were laughing, touching, lost in their own little world, completely unaware they were being watched. My hands trembled. The coffee cup lids rattled. My stomach turned. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. Then I did what I never thought I'd do. I turned around, walked calmly out of the building, and got into my car. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront him. Not yet. Because at that moment, something in me shifted. I saw everything clearly. Ethan wasn't just cheating on me. Also, he had taken me for a fool, and he had no idea the kind of woman he had underestimated. I backed away from the office door, silently, methodically, like I was on autopilot. My mind was eerily calm, too calm. In fact, started cataloging details like I was taking inventory. Megan's red lipstick smudged on Ethan's collar, his wedding ring glinting under the soft office lights, and the family photo on his desk. The one with me, him, and our dog at the beach turned face down. Convenient, like he had already separated this part of his life from the life we shared. I didn't say a word. I didn't cry or scream. I just turned around, walked out of the office, and kept going. My high heels clicked on the marble floor, echoing in the hallway. I pushed open the building doors and stepped out into the sunlight like nothing had happened, like my heart wasn't lying in pieces at my feet. I got into my car and sat there for almost an hour. I didn't touch the coffee or the pastries still sitting on the passenger seat. I didn't look at my phone. I just stared straight ahead, my grip tight on the steering wheel, waiting for something to rise inside me. Grief, rage, fear, but none of those came. Instead, what rose was clarity. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. The first name that popped up was exactly the one I needed. "Jack? It's Chloe," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Chloe? Wow, hey, yeah, I'm still practicing. Everything okay?" "No," I answered honestly, "but it will be. I need a divorce lawyer and a business strategy. Can you meet today?" There was a pause. I'll clear my schedule. My office in an hour? Perfect. And Jack? I paused. Yeah? Thank you. I hung up and started the car. As I pulled away from the curb, the numbness began to melt, not into sadness or even anger, but into something sharper, stronger, focused. If Ethan wanted to play games, I would show him I could play too. I'd play better, smarter. Game on, I whispered to myself as I drove. An hour later, I sat in Jack's office, legs crossed, hands folded neatly in my lap, like I hadn't just watched my marriage implode that morning. Jack leaned back. In his leather chair, eyebrows raised as I explained everything. He wants the business, I said plainly, sipping water. He asked to be listed as co-owner a couple of years after I launched Wildflower. But you started Wildflower, Jack said, shaking his head. You built it, from scratch, yes. But back then he convinced me it would help with investor relations, said it would look more solid if both of us were on paper. We were married, we were building everything together, and it made sense at the time. Jack raised a brow. So what do you want to do now? I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I want to give him exactly what he wants. He opened the folder slowly and scanned the paperwork. His eyes widened as he flipped through page after page. You already incorporated a new business? He asked. I did. 3 months ago. I noticed some odd behavior, missing invoices, vague explanations, money moved around without clear reason. I had a gut feeling something was off, even before I suspected he was cheating. I sat straighter, my voice calm but steel-edged. So I started preparing, quietly, legally, all the key assets, supplier contracts, vendor relationships, our client database, everything that actually makes the business function has already been moved to the new entity. Wildflower is just a shell now. Jack leaned back, stunned. He really has no idea who he's dealing with. No, I said with a small smile. But he's about to find out. That evening, the sun was setting when Ethan walked through the door. He looked tired, maybe from pretending all day, maybe from whatever lie he had told himself to justify what he did. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner like it was any other night. I waited until he set down his keys. Then I slid the manila envelope across the counter. What's this? He asked. Divorce papers, I said without turning. I've already signed my part. He picked up the envelope slowly, confused, cautious. Wait, what are you talking about? I know about you and Megan, I said flatly. Silence. Then he spoke weakly. How long have you known? Long enough. I saw you today, in your office, with her. He opened the envelope, thumbing through the pages with a stunned look on his face. So you're really doing this? He asked. Yes, because of one mistake? I looked up, knife in hand, onion half sliced on the cutting board. It wasn't one mistake, Ethan. He opened his mouth like he was about to argue, to defend, to deny, to gaslight. But something in my eyes must have stopped him, because he said nothing, just stared. It was 5 years of mistakes, I said calmly, each word landing with a quiet finality. Ethan's brow furrowed as he flipped through the divorce papers, page by page, his frown deepening. I watched him from the other side of the kitchen counter, standing at the stove as I slid diced onions into a pan. The sizzle filled the silence. This doesn't mention the business, he said, glancing up sharply. Where's the section? For Wildflower? He set the papers down and stared at me with a calculating expression, that familiar, arrogant glint returning to his eyes. It was the same look he wore in meetings when he thought he had outsmarted everyone in the room. I want the business, he said. All of it. You want Wildflower? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He straightened his shoulders. It's as much mine as it is yours. More, honestly. I've been the face of the brand for years. I laid the knife down carefully and reached for my bag, which sat on the stool beside me. From inside, I pulled out another folder and placed it gently on the counter between us. What's this? He asked, eyeing it suspiciously. Transfer of ownership, I said. Full rights to Wildflower Boutique. Everything. Name, inventory, accounts, trademarks. All yours. I pushed the folder toward him. Ethan blinked, clearly thrown off by how easily I handed it over. He opened the folder and skimmed the top page, still expecting a catch. He paused, then frowned. I expected a fight. I shrugged and resumed cooking, sliding the chopped peppers into the pan and stirring slowly. Why fight? You've made it clear where your priorities lie. He stared at me for a long moment, trying to read me. This is about Megan. This isn't about Megan, I replied without emotion. This is about you, about what we built and what you ruined. His jaw clenched. So you're just giving up? That's not like you, Chloe. I'm not giving up, I said, not looking at him. I'm moving on. That's different. To what? He scoffed. You think you can start over at E50? I turned down the heat and faced him calmly. I guess we'll see. There was a pause. He glanced down at the documents again. So that's it? You get the house? I get the company. That's the deal? Yes. Clean break. Fine, he muttered, stepping back. I'll have my lawyer review everything. Of course. He walked toward the doorway but stopped just short of leaving the kitchen. He turned his head just enough to throw one last barb. You know, he said, you're better off this way. You were always too emotional for business anyway. I didn't react. I just kept chopping herbs. the blade steady in my hand. Goodbye, Ethan. The signing took place in Jack's office 1 week later. Ethan arrived with his lawyer, a sharp, polished woman with perfectly styled hair and expensive heels that echoed on the marble floor. She gave me that practiced smile, the kind professionals use when they assume they know more than you do. Pitying, sympathetic, patronizing, if only she knew. She leafed through the documents slowly, one after the other, eyebrows lifting as she read. Well, she said finally, addressing me, this all seems in order. Though I must say, this settlement heavily favors my client. I'm aware, I replied, accepting the pen Jack slid toward me. I just want this over with. I signed without hesitation. No trembling hand, no pause, no second thoughts. Ethan watched me closely. His lips curled into a smug little smile, like he thought he'd won something. When all the documents were signed, notarized, and sealed, he stood up and extended his hand across the table. No hard feelings, Chloe. You built something special with Wildflower. I'll take good care of it. I'm sure you will, I said, standing as well but ignoring his outstretched hand. As we filed out of the conference room, Jack's assistant handed Ethan a small white gift box, neatly wrapped with a silver ribbon. What's this? He asked, surprised. Just a parting gift, I said lightly. For new beginnings. Ethan narrowed his eyes, but he didn't open it. He tucked the box under his arm and followed his lawyer out of the office. Jack and I remained behind as the door swung closed behind him. Later, he would open that box, probably in his car or in his new office, expecting something clever or sentimental. But there was nothing inside. Just an empty box with a handwritten note. This is what you really earned from our marriage. Enjoy. Was it petty? Maybe. But after 5 years of being talked over, minimized, and made to feel like I didn't understand my own success, I figured I'd earned that one small, satisfying moment. As for Wildflower, he didn't know that the trademark had already been legally transferred to a new entity. My new company, Wild Fern Studios. He had the logo, the name, and the old website. What he didn't have was the suppliers, the client base, the operations team, or the creative drive that made it all run. He had the shell. I kept the soul. Goodbye, Ethan, I said that day as I left Jack's office, walking out into the warm afternoon sunlight and into the rest of my life without looking back. 3 months passed since I walked away from everything. My marriage, Wildflower, the betrayal, and began building something new from the ground up. It wasn't easy, but for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. My new office was located in a converted warehouse on the east side of town. It had exposed brick walls, high ceilings with skylights, and plenty of natural light pouring in. The scent of fresh fabric samples and coffee lingered in the air. It wasn't just a workspace, it was a symbol of a clean slate. Lisa, our production manager and the first person to quit Wildflower the day after I did, poked her head into my office. The Anderson order is ready for review. Perfect timing, I said, standing and brushing a bit of lint off my blazer. Is Marcus here yet? Conference room B. Whole team's already with him. I followed her down the hallway, the steady sound of my heels echoing off the polished concrete floors. Through the tall glass walls of the conference room, I could see the team gathered around large sample boards and fabric swatches. The energy was alive, full of purpose and creativity. Marcus stood as I entered. One of our biggest buyers, he'd quietly shifted all of his business from Wildflower to my new company, without hesitation, without questions. He greeted me with a wide smile. Chloe, these new designs are incredible. Honestly, the quality is even better than before. Thank you, I said, returning his smile as I ran my hand over a roll of deep emerald silk. We've gone back to our original suppliers, the ones who prioritize craftsmanship, not just speed and profit. Smart move, Marcus nodded. You can feel the difference. Then he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice just enough to pique my curiosity. By the way, have you heard? Heard what? Wildflower missed their delivery deadline last week. Word is they're having serious supplier issues. I tilted my head, feigning mild surprise. Oh, that's unfortunate, Marcus chuckled. And that's not the only thing. There's talk. IRS-level talk. People are saying they're auditing Wildflower's books. Across the table, Lisa caught my eye. She was barely hiding her grin. She had been in charge of tax compliance at Wildflower before Ethan decided she was redundant. 2 weeks into his takeover, he let her go, assuming she wasn't valuable. What he didn't know and never cared to learn was that Lisa had kept immaculate records. She'd flagged every missed filing and every overdue notice he'd brushed aside in pursuit of influencer partnerships and flashy launches. And before leaving, she made sure I had everything I needed. How unfortunate, I said again, this time with a small, knowing smile. Now, shall we go over the Anderson collection? We dove into the samples, passing swatches around the table, discussing fit, finish, delivery dates, and pricing. The mood in the room was energized. We weren't just working, we were rebuilding and thriving. Halfway through the meeting, my phone buzzed. Jack. It's happening. IRS agents at Wildflower this morning. I excused myself, stepping into the hallway. My heart didn't race, no adrenaline, just a quiet sense of resolution. I called Jack immediately. How bad? I asked. Bad, he replied without hesitation. 3 years of questionable filings, payroll taxes unpaid for at least 6 months. Some pretty serious wage reporting issues, too. I let out a slow breath. He never listened. Never cared. Nope, Jack said. But the IRS does. They've frozen the business accounts. I paused. The phone pressed to my ear as I leaned against the window of my office. And Ethan? In full panic mode. Jack replied, clearly trying not to laugh. He called my office 3 times this morning, probably trying to find a way to stop the bleeding. I let out a small breath, not quite a laugh. Well, looks like his messes are finally catching up with him. Yeah, heard most of the staff quit this morning. Jack chuckled. I smiled slightly, remembering the emails I had sent out just a few days earlier. Quiet, respectful offers to Wildflower's most talented employees. Higher salaries, real benefits, and above all, appreciation. Every single one of them had replied with interest. Where will they go, I wonder? I asked, keeping my tone light, innocent. Jack didn't even try to hide his amusement. As, if you don't know, I need to get back to my meeting, I said, still smiling. Of course. Oh, and Chloe? Yeah? Megan came by my office today, looking for a job. That stopped me for half a second. Oh, really? Yeah. Apparently being the bankrupt boss's girlfriend isn't the power move she thought it would be. How tragic, I said dryly. Thanks for the update, Jack. You got it. Talk soon. I ended the call, slid my phone into my pocket, and re-entered the conference room. My team was deep in discussion about branding concepts and a new spring line we had in development. The energy was focused, positive, and full of momentum. Lisa glanced up as I returned to my seat. Everything okay? I nodded. Everything is exactly as it should be. 6 months after the divorce, I was standing in line at a coffee shop downtown, reviewing campaign notes on my phone, when I noticed someone at a nearby table. He looked familiar, too familiar. Even with the baseball cap pulled low and the casual hoodie that hung loosely off his frame, I knew it was Ethan. Gone were the designer suits, the polished shoes, the aura of confidence. He looked ordinary, tired, smaller. He glanced up, caught my eye, and hesitated for a moment before standing and walking over. Chloe, he said softly. I turned slightly, raising an eyebrow. Ethan. We stood there in awkward silence until the barista called my name. I stepped forward to grab my drink, then turned back to him. How are you? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He rubbed the back of his neck and gave a strained smile. Been better. The business? It's gone. Bankruptcy. I heard, I replied simply. His expression shifted, something sharper in his eyes. I bet you did. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. There was no satisfaction in seeing someone fall, even someone who had hurt me so deeply. Funny how everything fell apart right after you left. I looked up from my coffee and met Ethan's gaze. His voice was casual, like he was making small talk, but there was a weight behind it. A sadness, maybe even a little bitterness. Is it? I asked calmly, taking a slow sip. He shifted uncomfortably. You knew, didn't you? About the tax issues. About the supplier contracts that were coming due. I tilted my head. I tried to tell you for years that you were cutting corners. Ethan! I brought it up more times than I can count. You never listened. His jaw tightened. So this was revenge? Because of Megan? I shook my head. No. This wasn't about Megan. It never was. This was a consequence and not a scheme. A consequence of you taking credit for things you didn't do, of thinking you were entitled to success you didn't earn. I warned you. I gave you every opportunity to do better. You ignored it all. He fell silent, his eyes studying me like he was really seeing me. Maybe for the first time in our entire relationship. A long pause passed between us. You've changed, he said finally. No, I said gently, but firmly. I've always been this person. You just never noticed. Or maybe you never wanted to. Just then, the door to the coffee shop opened, letting in a cool breeze and Lisa. She waved when she spotted me, smiling brightly as she crossed the room. I stood, picking up my coffee. I should go, I told Ethan. My team is waiting. Your team? He asked, like the idea hadn't quite registered. Yes, my new company. We're doing quite well. I gave a small smile. Turns out I'm not too emotional for business after all. I stepped past him, pausing briefly. For what it's worth, I said, looking back one last time. I'm sorry it ended this way, and I meant it. He didn't reply. He just stood there, holding his paper cup, watching me leave like someone who finally realized what they'd lost but too late to do anything about it. As I reached the door, Lisa fell into step beside me. Was that him? She asked. Ancient history, I said, linking my arm through hers. Outside, the afternoon sun warmed our faces. We walked down the sidewalk together, lighthearted and unhurried. Two women with places to be and futures to build. We didn't need to look back, because in the end, I didn't need revenge. Justice had taken care of that for me. Slow, steady, and undeniable. Ethan had taken the company name, the office, and the brand. But he never understood that those were just things. The real value, the heart, the strategy, the soul behind the success was always me. And that was the one thing he could never take. Never.